Today's ball player is a San Francisco native and a former Seals third baseman who is still with us today, and it makes me happy when I find these players who are still blowing out their birthday candles well into their 90s. Sometimes I'll come across these players' names when looking through my dad's list of autographs to profile or while doing research on another player. And because this is a San Francisco Bay Area channel and we're talking Seals baseball, I have to mention local legend Lefty O'Doul, who traveled to Japan more than 30 times over the years promoting and teaching the game. The first time was in 1931, then going back throughout the 1930s until the start of World War II, then returning at the request of General Douglas MacArthur to try and smooth things out between the two countries the best way they could. They figured using baseball was one way to boost the morale of the vanquished. Lefty O'Doul's baseball career was prolific, spanning 5 decades, and he played in every one of them. Turning pro in 1917 with his hometown Seals, and 2 years later, he was playing on the New York Yankees. Besides Shoeless Joe Jackson, Lefty O'Doul has the highest career batting average and the highest career OPS for any player eligible for the Hall of Fame, but not enshrined. One day I'll show his autograph, but by now most of you know I choose to profile the lesser-known players who came through Seal Stadium, and like those who called it their home park. Like today's man of the moment who was a teenager when he played on the Seals and had just finished the season with the team when manager Lefty O'Doul picked him to go on his 1949 Goodwill Tour of Japan for a couple of weeks as part of his 22-man roster. And that's 22 if you count Lefty as a player, and he did. When the Seals got to Japan, Lefty, who was already famous in the land of the rising sun, and had been for years, was coaxed into the very first game of the tour at the request of the thousands of yelling Japanese fans in attendance. So he put himself in the 8th inning to pinch hit. He also made himself starting pitcher in another game, with the 52-year-old pitching 3 innings of ball. But we're here at a different game on that tour, and Goodwill ambassador, tour director, and player manager Lefty O'Doul is not at the plate, up on the mound, or even at the top step of the dugout, but in this game has made himself third base coach. And in order to stay out of the mud, he's standing on top of cinder blocks in the rain, holding a Japanese umbrella. His Seals team had yet to lose to any of the Japanese teams, and with the bad weather all tour, playing in the rain during the remnants of a typhoon named Patricia wouldn't stop all involved from continuing. Because on this day, the Japanese team the Seals were playing were up 4-1 on the Seals after 5 innings, and they were desperately seeking their first win over the American occupiers. With some 10,000 soaking wet fans sitting in the rain, not only cheering for their baseball team to win, but looking for anything to be proud of. The weather and the field conditions were so bad from days of rain that hard-hit grounders into the outfield would come to a dead stop in a puddle. But neither side wanted the game called off, with Lefty saying, "We had advertised that we'd play rain or shine, so we figured if the fans could sit in the rain, we could certainly play in it." So the game continued. Which brings us to the 6th inning, and a 19-year-old third baseman from San Francisco named Oliver Anthony Cheso would splash his way through the puddles as he walked out towards the batter's box for another turn at bat. His nickname? Reno. But this time when Reno came up to the plate, he did so wearing a rain jacket. Third base coach Lefty O'Doul called timeout and told the teenager and fellow San Franciscan to take it off. Why is his nickname Reno? I don't know. You'd have to ask him. He was born August 2nd, 1929 in San Francisco and went to Mission High School, famous for its baseball players that I listed off in my Walt Judnich show. Reno had a little brother named Ray who was taller and also played third base. Today, Reno is 96 years old and is 5'10" and 175 pounds, and is a righty who can play a variety of positions, but usually third base. And it's at this point in time, Mr. Cheso's career, that's probably a good spot for him. And he is another Bay Area boy who became a Gale when he chose to attend St. Mary's College in the beautiful rolling hills of Moraga, California, famous for its baseball players and basketball teams. He would also start his pro baseball career at this time in Class C with the 1948 Salt Lake City Bees, getting into 122 games. 105 of those were at third base, with the rookie hitting 13 home runs. His hometown team, the Seals, had been keeping tabs on Reno and made him a Seal for 1949, getting into 123 games, playing a variety of positions, but mostly outfield, playing with Walt Judnich, Steve Nagy, Elmer Singleton, and Jackie Tobin. All played in the majors. The Seals' record that season was 83 wins and 100 losses. And if that wasn't enough baseball for one season, it's the middle of October and most of the Seals players are now boarding a plane to Japan for a couple of weeks on another one of Lefty O'Doul's goodwill tours. A player who also went on that tour and could be considered a ringer was California boy Milo Candini, a former MLB pitcher with nearly 40 starts in the majors, and like the players above, also signed for my dad. Reno Cheso started 1950 with the Seals, getting in 10 games, but spent most of the season down in Class B, playing in 140 games with the Yakima Bears, alongside future Seal teammates Mike Baxis of the San Francisco Baxis brothers, Bill D. Bradford, and Oakland's Will Tessera. Still in Class B for 1951, but Reno was now playing up in Vancouver, playing in 139 games with the Capellanos before coming back home to play the next 4 seasons with the Seals, playing in well over 100 games each season from 1952 to 1955 when he retired. And that was the year Dad got his autograph. During his 8 seasons that were played mostly in the high minors, Reno hit 46 home runs, and surprisingly, you can find that team roster and the stats online for that 1949 Goodwill Tour. And had he not gone on that trip to Japan, Reno Cheso would not have any Japanese baseball cards. It's because of that excursion he has 13, all from 1949, in a variety of styles and from different Japanese card companies. As for American issue cards, he has a popcorn card from 1951 wearing his Capellanos uniform, and 2 from 1953. A Mother's Cookies card, and 1 from the Seals team set. Now, back to today's intro, and the Seals are in Nagoya, Japan. It's October 27th, 1949, playing baseball during the remnants of a typhoon on a very wet day. Reno Cheso had walked up to the plate wearing a rain jacket and was told by Lefty O'Doul to remove it, which Reno did. So now he's standing in the batter's box, taking a few awkward warm-up swings, playing baseball in the rain, something he hasn't done since he was a kid. But on this day, he's wearing a soaking wet, old-time, heavy flannel Seals uniform that probably weighs a ton. Every fiber filled with water from his socks to those hair fibers under his saturated Seals ball cap. He takes another awkward practice swing through the rain. Weather and field conditions like this back in the States, the game never would have taken place. But Lefty O'Doul had already stated that they'd play ball, rain or shine. And of course, the home country didn't want to stop. They were looking for their first victory over the Americans and were holding a 4-1 lead. I imagine young Reno was a little embarrassed after being told by Lefty to take off his rain jacket. Then again, it was probably a little embarrassing going to the plate with it on in the first place. Which makes me wonder if the veterans in the dugout set him up. It's definitely something veterans would do to a 19-year-old second-year player. And of all the questions I could ask Mr. Cheso today, I would ask him about that. And I'm sure he'd remember because of what followed. Reno was crouched at the plate in the rain waiting for the pitch from Takahiko Besaho. And here it comes. It's not a spitball, but it's definitely wet as it's thrown to Reno, who proceeds to hit a first pitch grand slam, turning the game around with a swing of the teenager's bat, with the Seals going on to win 13-4. Upon their arrival in Japan, the Seals players and their entourage were given special cards with their photo on it that they clipped to their shirt. It had their name in English and in Japanese, and wore it everywhere they went, and were treated very well by most under the circumstances. After hitting that grand slam, Reno Cheso was treated like a hero by some Japanese. This was evident when the next day the teenager was shopping for a camera in a local Nagoya camera store, and they wouldn't take his money. insisting on giving him one as a gift. But not all Japanese were so gracious, which was to be expected. At one game in front of 60,000 Japanese fans, the Seals won a close game, and as they were exiting, were ducking Coca-Cola bottles thrown by some locals in the crowd. Mob mentality is real, and if a mob is mad for a good reason, say you bombed their country, killed their friends and family, and here you are conquering Americans, beating them in every single game in their home country that you are now in control of. Yeah, things could get weird and wild real fast, and hate is a powerful motivator, especially when multiplied by the thousands who are all jacked up on Coca-Cola, which is illegal in Japan and only served by the Americans at the ballpark during the 2 weeks the Seals were in the country. As a visiting American, this might keep you on edge all day and night during your stay. And maybe after seeing your American-made Coca-Cola bottles whizzing past your head, you start to wonder if you made the right choice. And what made you think it was such a good idea to visit Japan so soon after the war? Was it the exuberance of youth? Perhaps. Or, as Bart Simpson's karate teacher said, yes, the impetuousness of youth. But really, with Reno being only 19 years old, there was probably a myriad of reasons why he took that trip to Japan back in 1949. Turned out to be a real nice chapter in his life. And by taking that trip with Lefty O'Doul and the San Francisco Seals, only added to the story of Reno Cheso. And odds are he's probably the last player who was on that trip still around to talk about it.